Solaris seethed with disgust as he watched the pathetic human soldier struggle to keep his footing in the deep snow. These humans would be slaughtered instantly by the ruthless Zaxxon if this was a real battle, Solaris thought. Not just killed, annihilated. The icy wind howled across the frozen wastelands of planet Boreas. Solaris marched effortlessly in the heavy combat armor, his 3 legs never missing a step. He was Iridian, battle-hardened, trained to withstand the harshest conditions, not like the clumsy human floundering behind him in the snow. Solaris turned to glare at the soldier. Thomas Thompson, the human was called, young for a soldier, maybe 20 Earth years old, cheeks red from cold and exertion. Thompson grinned at Solaris. The fool was actually smiling. Did he think this was a game? The Iridian Celestial Forces and United Earth Armed Forces were staging joint combat drills, useless in Solaris's opinion. When the ruthless Zaxxon invaded, these soft humans would be crushed. He had seen it happen to a dozen species. Only Iridians had a chance. Major Zahn, Solaris's Iridian commander, briefed the troops. Their objective, stage an assault on a simulated Zaxxon fortress built into a cliffside 20 clicks away. Reach the objective by nightfall, or the whole platoon would be left in the freezing cold to die. Maybe that would give the humans a small taste of real war. Solaris checked his pulse rifle and grunted. He would have to babysit Thompson and these other careless humans. They laughed and joked as they marched, oblivious to the perils that awaited. The Iridian had no idea that soon, these undisciplined humans would utterly shock him to his core. The platoon trudged onward through the deep snow, closing in on their objective. Solaris kept a wary eye on the surrounding terrain, alert for any signs of danger. Suddenly, Thompson held up a fist, signaling the group to halt. Solaris watched with a mix of annoyance and curiosity as the human crouched down, studying the snow with intense focus. "What is the meaning of this, human?" Solaris demanded impatiently. "We have no time for your games." Thompson ignored the Iridian's outburst, his face now etched with a seriousness that Solaris had not seen before. The human carefully brushed away a layer of snow, revealing a nearly invisible tripwire stretched taut across their path. Solaris's eyes widened as he realized the wire was connected to a hidden explosive device, cleverly concealed beneath the snow. Thompson glanced up at Solaris, a hint of a smirk on his face. "Looks like the Zaxxon aren't as dumb as we thought. This is a nasty little surprise they left for us." Solaris watched in stunned silence as Thompson expertly disarmed the trap, his hands steady and precise. The human stood up, dusting the snow from his knees, and signaled the platoon to move forward. As they neared the fortress, Thompson retrieved a set of small drones from his pack and sent them whirring ahead to scout the area. Within moments, the platoon's HUD displays lit up with markers indicating the positions of the simulated Zaxxon defenders. Solaris marveled at the humans' use of technology, realizing that their earlier antics had been a clever facade to mask their true capabilities. The humans advanced in a coordinated leapfrog pattern, using smoke grenades and flashbangs to disorient the Zaxxon. Solaris found himself moving in sync with Thompson, covering the human's flank as they pushed forward. The Iridian's initial doubts about the human's abilities began to fade, replaced by a grudging respect for their unconventional tactics and adaptability. As they neared the entrance to the fortress, Solaris glanced at Thompson, who grinned back at him. "Not bad for a bunch of soft humans, eh?" Solaris grunted, a hint of a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Maybe there was more to these humans than met the eye. Perhaps, just perhaps, they stood a chance against the Zaxxon after all. The platoon slammed through the fortress walls, plasma rifles blazing. A hail of return fire from the simulated Zaxxon defenders forced them to scramble for cover. Solaris ducked behind a crumbling wall, the stone hot against his armor from enemy blasts. He popped up to squeeze off shots from his rifle at the Zaxxon positions. To his left, Thompson and 2 other humans were pinned down by a ruthless assault. Purple plasma bolts sizzled through the air, inches from their heads. Thompson glanced at his comrades. "Cover me!" Before Solaris could stop him, Thompson charged forward in a mad sprint. Plasma fire sliced past him on all sides, but the human juked and weaved with blinding speed. Solaris watched in disbelief as Thompson reached the Zaxxon line. With a raw-throated battle cry, the human vaulted over the barricade in a single bound. He crashed into the defenders in a whirlwind of close-quarters violence. Thompson's rifle cracked as he fired point-blank into scaly hides. Zaxxon fell with shrieks of pain. The human's fists and boots hammered their bodies, his movements almost too fast to follow. There was a primal ferocity to his attack, an unleashed savagery. Behind Thompson, the other humans rallied with weapons blazing. They flooded into the gap he had torn in the defenses. Under the onslaught of human fury, the Zaxxon line crumbled. Solaris had never seen anything like it. These humans fought with a desperate madness, an intensity bordering on bloodlust. It was as if nothing could make them stop, no matter how outmatched. The platoon pushed deeper into the fortress, rolling over Zaxxon positions like a frenzied tide. Solaris realized this indomitable spirit was the humans' greatest weapon, their refusal to give up, regardless of odds. He understood then how they had resisted the Zaxxons so long. What they lacked in numbers and tech, they made up for in raw, primal willpower. The humans would never stop fighting while a single one still drew breath. The platoon burst into the central chamber of the fortress. Solaris skidded to a halt, his eyes widening. A monstrous Zaxxon war machine loomed before them, bristling with glowing energy cannons and shielded in thick armor plating. It was a sight that would make even the most battle-hardened Iridian soldier quail. But the humans did not hesitate. With fierce battle cries, they charged straight at the mechanical behemoth, weapons blazing. Solaris could only stare in disbelief at their sheer audacity. "Focus fire on the joints! Aim for the optics!" Thompson shouted over the din of battle. The humans unleashed a hail of concentrated plasma fire, the air sizzling with the heat of their weapons. Solaris shook off his shock and raised his own rifle, adding his firepower to the onslaught. But even their combined might seemed to barely scratch the war machine's dense armor. It stomped forward, energy cannons glowing as they powered up for a devastating barrage. "Solaris, heads up!" The Iridian turned to see Thompson pull a small orb from his pack and toss it his way. Solaris snagged it out of the air, looking at the human quizzically. "EMP grenade," Thompson yelled. "Stick it on the underbelly." Understanding dawned in Solaris's mind. The humans had been holding this ace up their sleeve the whole time. He gave Thompson a sharp nod and burst into a sprint, his powerful legs propelling him across the chamber floor. The war machine loomed over Solaris as he neared, its flailing limbs threatening to crush him. With finely honed battle instincts, the Iridian juked and dodged, rolling under the machine's bulk. He slapped the EMP grenade against its unarmored underside and dove clear. A searing flash of light burst from the grenade. Arcs of electricity crackled across the war machine's frame. It shuddered and convulsed, servos whining in protest, and then collapsed with a resounding boom. Smoke poured from its joints as it lay unmoving. Solaris pulled himself from the wreckage, his armor scraped and dented. Thompson ran over to him, a huge grin splitting his face. He clapped the Iridian on the shoulder. "Not bad for a bunch of undisciplined rabble, eh?" Solaris barked out a laugh, shaking his head ruefully. Any shred of doubt about these humans had been thoroughly obliterated. They were warriors, through and through, indomitable to the end. The satisfying hum of victory filled the air as the platoon secured the simulated Zaxxon fortress. Solaris found himself grinning, caught up in the infectious enthusiasm of his human comrades. They had fought with skill and courage, proving their mettle against the toughest odds. As the soldiers gathered their gear and prepared to return to base, a sudden crackle of static burst from their comms. Solaris cocked his head, listening intently as a distorted voice filled the channel. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Epsilon Colony. We are under attack by Zaxxon raiders. They came out of nowhere. Our defenses are failing. We need immediate assistance." The voice cut off abruptly, replaced by an ominous silence. Thompson's face hardened, his earlier jubilation replaced by grim determination. He turned to his platoon, his voice ringing with authority. You heard the call. Epsilon Colony needs our help. We're the closest unit. I'm not going to stand by while innocent civilians are slaughtered. He looked around at his soldiers, making eye contact with each one. I know we just finished a grueling exercise, but this is what we trained for. This is what we signed up for. Who's with me? A chorus of shouts and raised fists answered him. Solaris stepped forward, placing a hand on Thompson's shoulder. I'm with you, Thompson. Let's show these Zaxxon the true meaning of unity. Thompson nodded, a fierce smile on his lips. Then let's move out. Double time. The platoon raced towards the waiting dropships, their fatigue forgotten in the rush of adrenaline. Within minutes they were soaring over the frozen landscape, the thrusters roaring as they pushed the craft to its limits. As they approached Epsilon Colony, the scene below them was one of utter devastation. Flames licked at the ruins of shattered buildings, and the air was thick with smoke. The Zaxxon raiders rampaged through the streets, their cruel laughter mixing with the screams of the dying. Solaris felt a cold rage settle in his gut. These monsters had no honor, no mercy. They killed for the sheer joy of it. Beside him, Thompson's face was a mask of stone, his eyes burning with an intensity that Solaris had never seen before. The dropships touched down on the outskirts of the colony, and the platoon leapt into action. They moved through the ruined streets with practiced efficiency, their weapons at the ready. The crackle of plasma fire filled the air as they engaged the Zaxxon raiders. Solaris fought side by side with Thompson, their movements perfectly synchronized. They flowed through the battle like a well-oiled machine, covering each other's blind spots and cutting down the enemy with ruthless precision. But even their skill and determination could not stem the tide of Zaxxon reinforcements. The raiders seemed to pour in from every direction, their numbers overwhelming the beleaguered defenders. Solaris saw his comrades falling around him, their blood staining the ground. Thompson's face was grim as he surveyed the situation. He knew they couldn't hold out much longer. The Zaxxon were simply too many. He grabbed Solaris by the arm, his grip urgent. Solaris, I need you to do something for me. The Iridian looked at him, his eyes questioning. Thompson took a deep breath, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. I need you to lead the survivors out of here. Get them to safety. I'll stay behind and cover your retreat. Solaris shook his head vehemently. No, I won't leave you behind. We fight together. We die together. Thompson smiled sadly, his hand tightening on Solaris's arm. This is what we humans do, Solaris. We sacrifice for the greater good. He shoved Solaris away towards the huddled group of survivors. Go, now! That's an order! Solaris hesitated for a moment, torn between his loyalty to Thompson and his duty to the survivors. But he knew Thompson was right. With a heavy heart, he gathered the remaining humans and civilians, leading them away from the doomed colony. Behind them, the sound of plasma fire intensified as Thompson made his final stand. Solaris forced himself not to look back, focusing on getting his charges to safety. He could feel the weight of Thompson's sacrifice like a physical burden on his shoulders. Hours later, safely aboard a UF transport ship, Solaris finally allowed himself to grieve. Thompson was gone, his body never found among the ruins of Epsilon Colony. But his spirit, his indomitable will, lived on in the hearts of those he had saved. Solaris knew he would never forget the bravery and selflessness he had witnessed in his human comrades. They had shown him the true strength of the human spirit, a strength that could not be measured in numbers or technology. As he looked out at the stars, Solaris made a silent vow. He would honor Thompson's memory by fighting on, by standing side by side with the humans in their struggle against the Zaxxon. For he knew now that with soldiers like Thompson, with the unbreakable human will to survive and protect, there was still hope for the galaxy. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.